On the news, Nigeria ranks worse on 2021 Corruption Perceptions Index. Senate passes harmonized electoral bill with direct, indirect, and consensus modes of primaries. And NLC suspends planned nationwide protest over fuel subsidy. We're glad to have you join us to News Now. I am Folashade Ogurinde. President Muhammadu Buhari has officially launched the national policy on 5G for Nigeria's digital economy. The president, during the launch in Abuja, explained that the national 5G policy is in line with the commitment of his administration to support the digital economy as an enabler for diversification of the nation's economy. President Buhari also announced that the policy includes a deployment plan to ensure that major cities across the country benefit from the technology. Our correspondent, Abisola Adebayo, has the details in this report.
In September 2021, the Federal Executive Council approved the national policy of 5G network in the country after a 6-month investigation into possible health risks associated with it. 4 months later, President Muhammadu Buhari has finally launched the 5G technology, making Nigeria the first African country to do so. While highlighting the benefits of the 5G spectrum, President Buhari says the federal government will take full advantage of the opportunity provided by the technology to improve Nigeria's economy, security, and general well-being.
5G technologies offer a number of benefits that can support virtually every sector of our economy. For instance, it can enhance connectivity, improve healthcare, support education. It will also support security institutions with real-time communication. To this end, I hereby direct all the security institutions to immediately leverage 5G when deployed in order to beef up security in the country.
President Buhari also allayed fears over the health safety of the 5G network, affirming that such issues has been effectively addressed.
We commenced the process with 5G trials in some selected locations in November 2019. Multi-sectoral stakeholders then deliberated on the report of the trials to ensure that health, security, and other concerns were effectively addressed in developing a policy that suits our country.
On his part, the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Issa Pantami, announced that his ministry has successfully auctioned the spectrum for the deployment of 5G technology at the sum of 250 billion naira each. Pantami expressed confidence that given the experiences from other countries and available research, Nigeria would derive maximum benefit from the deployment of 5G.
Research has shown that there are many benefits of 5G deployment if that is done successfully. And particularly, looking at the 3 core areas of this administration: number 1, economic development; number 2, security; number 3, transparency and fighting corruption. We discovered that 5G deployment will be able to support our administration in ensuring that we enhance our performance in these 3 core areas.
President Buhari thereafter directed the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy to supervise the implementation of the policy being undertaken by the Nigeria Communications Commissions with the support of other government institutions. Abisola Adebayo, TV360 News.
The National Assembly has passed the harmonized version of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. The electoral bill was harmonized after the Senate and House of Representatives agreed to amend Clause 84 of the document. The harmonized version, which was passed by the Senate during plenary on Tuesday, includes direct, indirect, and consensus methods of nominating candidates by political parties. Senate President Ahmed Lawan said both chambers have agreed on the harmonized bill to give a clear and sufficient definition for each mode of primaries and how they are to be conducted.
While the House passed the mode of primaries to be direct and indirect only, the Senate passed the mode of primaries to be direct, indirect, and consensus. What we have done is to give very clear, sufficient, and sufficient definition to each mode of primaries. The direct primaries is well defined and how it will be conducted. Ditto the indirect primaries. And for the consensus, the two chambers have produced in this bill now very clear definition of how a consensus candidate would emerge. And therefore, we are very glad that we have been able to achieve this consensus between the two chambers to arrive at this harmonized version. And we are also very optimistic that Mr. President will sign the bill.
Nigeria has observed a further plunge in the Corruption Perception Index (CPI) for 2021, according to Transparency International. The latest results, co-released by the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center (CISLAC), reveals that Nigeria's score dropped by 1 point to 154 on the Global Corruption Index over the last year. Our correspondent, Simisola Adigun, tells us more in this report.
The Corruption Perceptions Index, CPI, comes at a time when Nigeria is up against rising insecurity, high unemployment rate, and financial impropriety in public places amidst damning revelations, to mention but a few. According to Transparency International, Nigeria scored 24 out of 100 points in the 2021 Corruption Perceptions Index (CPI), falling back 1 point compared to the 2020 edition. The Executive Director, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center (CISLAC), Awal Rafsanjani, explained that corruption is on the increase in Nigeria as high-profile convictions against politicians and government officials have fallen short of public expectations.
Corruption has totally affected governance, good governance in this country. And that is where we are concerned as patriotic, responsible citizens to see that we do everything possible to support the sincere effort of government to combat corruption and ensure free, corrupt society and country, so that Nigerians should deserve decency of life.
For emphasis, Rafsanjani maintained that the result is not an assessment of Nigeria's anti-graft agencies, but rather the level of corruption in the public sector.
It is not an assessment of the Nigerian government anti-corruption or its agencies. It is purely looking at public sector corruption. As you all know today, for you to get admission into higher institutions, you have to pay bribe. Everything that has to do with public sector is embedded with the corruption.
On the flip side, the anti-graft watchdog believes that the situation is redeemable, while also listing out recommendations to improve Nigeria's fight against corruption.
The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, anti-graft agencies, Ministry of Justice, and Foreign Affairs should work in synergy and engage their international counterparts to ensure that global enablers or middlemen are blacklisted, deregistered, or held to account under relevant international laws policies and international frameworks to which Nigeria is a signatory. Also, other arms of government need to be involved in the fight against corruption. It should not be left to the executive arm alone.
On a sub-regional basis, Nigeria is among the worst performing countries in West Africa, only second to Guinea-Bissau, which was ranked 165. Simisola Adigun, TV360 News.
The Nigeria Labour Congress NLC has suspended its planned nationwide protest scheduled to hold January 27 and February 2 over petrol subsidy removal. The Labour Congress President Ayuba Waba would disclose this to newsmen in Abuja, said the union came to this decision after its National Executive Council meeting held on Tuesday morning. Earlier in the week, the leadership of the NLC had vowed to continue with its planned nationwide rally on Thursday, despite the announcement by the federal government that it would no longer remove the fuel subsidy for now. Moving on, worried by the increase in consumption of fatty foods, which according to World Health Organization estimate kills over 250,000 people yearly. The Ministry of Health has said it would ensure that regulation on fats and oils are gazetted on time. The Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Health, Mahmouda Maman, made this known during the official conferment of the Trans Fatty Acids Policy Champion Award on the Minister of State for Health, Olorunimbe Bamora, in Abuja. Maman also revealed that the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, is reviewing fat and oils regulation to capture the 2% maximum limit set by the World Health Organization.
Currently, NAFDAC under our watch is reviewing the fat and oil regulation to capture 2% maximum limit set up by the World Health Assembly. And the ministry is giving all necessary support to make sure that these regulations are enforced and gazetted on time. We call on all stakeholders to join resources together technically and financially to fight this monster by developing appropriate regulations and programs to ensure trans-fatty acid-free Nigeria.
Also speaking at the event, the Minister of State for Health, Olorunimbe Bamora, added that trans fatty acids have been linked to an increase in the risk of heart disease, diabetes, obesity, cancer, and death.
Every life is precious, and we have a duty to safeguard. And for us in the Ministry of Health, that is the least that we must do. It's a duty that we owe our people as the overall regulatory body on issues regarding their health. People should not die needlessly, particularly from what they eat, either out of ignorance or because of failure of government to do that which is right. So this award is not an award for Olorunimbe Bamora, it's an award for the Ministry, Federal Ministry of Health.
The ministry will expedite the process to ensure that those regulations reach Ministry of Justice. And even when it gets there, they will work with their competitors to ensure that these regulations are formally gazetted so that we can begin to protect the health of our people, even without them knowing that their health is being protected. TF elimination is one of those public health experiments where even without the public doing anything, their health will be protected simply because we have reduced the main source from which they consume poisons. Our people love eating pizzas, they love eating burgers, they love eating wafers, they love eating baked foods, cupcakes, name them. All the things that people like are the things that kill them.
The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for global action to ensure that no child misses out on access to quality education. The UN official made this known during a media briefing to mark this year's International Day of Education. While reflecting on the impact of COVID-19 on education, Guterres called for financial support for the educational growth of developing countries.
But the turmoil in education goes beyond questions of access and inequality. Our world is changing at a dizzying pace with technological innovation, unprecedented changes in the world of work, the onset of the climate emergency, and the widespread loss of trust between people and institutions. Conventional education systems are struggling to deliver the knowledge, skills, and values we need to create a greener, better, and safer future for all. Education is a preeminent public good and an essential enabler for the entire 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The international community cannot afford to be agnostic about its provision, quality, and relevance. That is why I am convening a summit on transforming education later this year. The time has come to reignite our collective commitment to education. That means investing in comprehensive plans to help students recover from learning losses. It means putting education at the heart of broader recovery efforts, aiming at transforming economies and societies and accelerating progress on sustainable development. It means financial solidarity with developing countries. And it means embarking on a process of reflection and analysis to identify how national education systems can evolve and transform between now and 2030.
After 5 years of service as a Commissioner of Police in Lagos State, Akeem Odumosun has handed over to Abiodun Alabi, who is to take over as the new Commissioner of Police. At a farewell parade organized by the Lagos State government, dignitaries present at the event delivered goodwill messages to the outgoing Commissioner of Police, Akeem Odumosun. In his address, the Governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, lauded Odumosun's efforts in discharging his duties and ensuring state security.
This is a man that is many things to many people. And you can see the array of protocols that I need to read this morning because of him. You can't see that he's a man that has gone beyond just being a fine gentleman, just being a fine police officer. He's been a man that has touched almost every sphere of life. When his announcement was made to take over the Lagos State Police Command, we knew, and I know very well, that his job was cut out for him. His appointment at that time welcomed very high expectation that his arrival will bring the much needed succor that a lot of Lagosians are crying for because of all of the various security challenges that were rearing his head in the state there. The expectation was certainly not unfounded based on his very deep knowledge of the nooks and crannies of the state.
In his thank you address, Akeem Odumosun decried the dwindling image of the police force aided by crises such as the nationwide #EndSARS protests in 2020. To bridge the gap between the police and the people, he enjoined the police officers to ensure the restoration of public interest in the force.
Sadly, the image of the Nigerian police force is dwindling by the day, especially with the recent nationwide EndSARS crisis. There is currently a strained relationship taken to remedy this strained relationship between the police and the public. And lot still needs to be done. And it's my conviction that things will be better. It is believed that if the recommendations of the various committees of police reforms are fully implemented, Nigeria, indeed the people will be better for it.
We'll take a break here, but still to come, UN asks Burkina Faso military to free President Kabore immediately. Details of the story and more right after this break. Welcome back. Now here is a recap of some of our top stories tonight. The National Assembly has passed the harmonized version of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. The harmonized version, which was passed by the Senate during plenary on Tuesday, includes direct, indirect and consensus methods of nominating candidates by political parties. We also told you that Nigeria has dropped 5 places in the 2021 Corruption Perceptions Index, CPI Index, according to Transparency International. Nigeria scored 24 out of 100 points in the 2021 index. Well, in case you missed any of our news bulletin or for more updates, do log on to our website on www.tv360nigeria.com. You can also follow us on our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Google Plus at TV360 Nigeria. On Facebook, we are at TV360 Online. The World Health Organization, WHO, says in the past week, one person died of COVID-19 every 12 seconds. WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus made this revelation on Monday at the 150th session of the agency executive board meeting in Geneva, Switzerland. The DG noted that on average last week, 100 cases were reported every 3 seconds and somebody lost their life to COVID-19 every 12 seconds, while adding that it has been 2 years since the organization declared COVID-19 a global health emergency. Further revealed that 350 million cases have now been reported and more than 5.5 million deaths recorded across the country.
On average, last week, 100 cases were reported every 3 seconds, and somebody lost their life to COVID-19 every 12 seconds. Since Omicron was first identified just 9 weeks ago, more than 80 million cases have been reported to WHO, more than were reported in the whole of 2020. So far, the explosion in cases has not been matched by a surge in deaths. Although deaths are increasing in all regions, especially in Africa, the region with the least access to vaccines. It's true that we will be living with COVID for the foreseeable future, and that we will need to learn to manage it through a sustained and integrated system for acute respiratory diseases, which will provide a platform for preparedness for future pandemics. But learning to live with COVID cannot mean that we give this virus a free ride. But it's dangerous to assume that Omicron will be the last variant or that we are in the end game.
We'll take a break here and return with more stories in business. To stay with us. Welcome back. Well, let's now join Simi Soladigun for business stories. Over to you, Simi.
Thank you, Falashade. Welcome to business. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has voted to retain the monetary policy rate, which measures interest rate at 11.5%. Governor of the Apex Bank, Godwin Emefiele, while addressing journalists on Tuesday after the committee's first meeting for the year at the CBN headquarters in Abuja, said that the committee members unanimously retained key lending rates. Emefiele also said that the committee believed that the existing monetary policy stance has supported the growth recovery and should be allowed to continue for a little longer for consolidation to achieve the MPC mandate of price stability that is conducive for sustainable growth. We'll take a short break here and be back with stock market report. It is the last week of January and global investors are nervous. Now, changes in global markets are having immediate and measurable effects on Nigerian investment. Gladly, on Nigerian Stock Exchange, it ended bullish, reversing Monday's losses. The benchmark all-share index inched up to 0.02% to close at 45.939 basis points, while current market capitalization stands at 25 trillion naira. In the aggregate, 116 NGS equities participated in trading, ending with 20 gainers and 15 losers. Courtville Business Solutions and EcoBank Transnational topped the gainers list with a combined gain of 10 naira 5 kobo. Topping the losers group, we have C&I Leasing Company, closely followed by Prestige Assurance Company, ending with a combined 4 naira 24 kobo loss. Ending today's trading session on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, a total of 247 million volume of shares valued at 3.577 billion naira were traded in 4,242 deals. Now to select global stocks, the FTSE ended positive, but that happy ending did not extend to the Dow Jones and the Nikkei. U.S. equities have had a turbulent start to 2022 as stock indexes slid on Tuesday, on track to confirm a correction to a sell-off in technology stocks. It declined by 2.23%. Asian equity markets were hit as growing fears of a possible Russian invasion of Ukraine dampened investors' appetite for risk. Also, investors are concerned that the U.S. Federal Reserve is likely to raise interest rates in March for the first time in 3 years in the face of inflation. Meanwhile, UK's investors have been braced up for more volatility after the Ukraine crisis, and fears of imminent U.S. interest rate rises triggered a global sell-off. That fight back has enabled London's FTSE index to trade higher from Monday's 2.6% fall to Tuesday's bullish end. Well, that's all on the stock market report. Back to you, Folashade.
Well, many thanks to me for that update on the business scene. And now on the foreign scene, the United Nations General Assembly designated January 27th every year as International Holocaust Remembrance Day. In commemoration of the celebration, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, in a press conference on Tuesday, urged every member state to honor the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust and to shun racism. Guterres also paid tribute to the memory of the victims of the Holocaust and reaffirmed the unwavering commitment of the UN to counter racism and other forms of intolerance that may lead to group-targeted violence.
We remember the 6 million Jewish men, women and children who perished in the Holocaust, and also the Roma and Sinti and the countless other victims of its unprecedented horror and calculated cruelty. The Holocaust defined the United Nations. Our very name was coined to describe the alliance fighting the Nazi regime and its allies. Our charter was drafted in San Francisco as the Dachau concentration camp was liberated. The United Nations must always be on the front line of the fight against anti-Semitism and all other forms of religious bigotry and racism. Today, we witness an alarming resurgence of xenophobia and hate. Anti-Semitism, the oldest and most persistent form of prejudice, is rising yet again. Attempts to downplay or downright deny the Holocaust are proliferating. No society is immune to irrationality or intolerance. We must never forget that the Holocaust could have been prevented.
And now on the sporting scene, 8 people have been killed and dozens others injured in a stampede outside a Cameroonian football stadium as fans attempted to gain access into the Olambe Stadium in Yaoundé to watch the match between Cameroon and Comoros on Monday. Following the incident, Cameroonian President Paul Biya has immediately ordered an investigation into the tragedy. Meanwhile, the Confederation of African Football (CAF) says it is investigating the situation and is in constant communication with the Cameroonian authorities and the local organizing committee in order to obtain more details about the incident. But that's the size of our news bulletin. Many thanks for watching. I am Folashade Ogurinde. Bye for now.